Her daughter-in-law called her the extra guest in a group chat she wasn't meant to see. Elaine Mercer, widowed mother and legal co-owner of the house, read every word. Her son stayed silent, just like he always did. By Friday, the refinance listed one name on the mortgage, her son. They thought she'd be too polite to push back. Instead, she reclaimed the title and changed the locks. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Elaine Mercer heard the soft ping of her phone from the kitchen counter. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, glancing toward the half-prepped potato salad waiting for her return. Another ping followed, then a third. It was the group thread Jeremy had created weeks ago. Zoe's 19th bash, which she had been strangely quiet in, though she'd read every message with the quiet diligence of someone still trying to belong. She tapped it open. A new message blinked at the bottom of the screen. Not from Jeremy, not from Zoe. Lauren Mercer, just FYI, she's like the extra guest, not an actual family anchor. The air seemed to thicken around Elaine as the words settled. She didn't blink, didn't scroll, just stared. The message had clearly been intended for someone else, maybe Lauren's mother, maybe one of her endless PTA-style confidants. But it had landed here straight in Elaine's hands like a blade pressed politely into her palm. A second followed. Lauren Mercer. Oops, ignore that last one. Then, just as quickly, it vanished. Message unsent, but it was too late. Elaine had already read it, and even if she hadn't, the wording had burned itself onto the back of her eyelids. She turned slowly, leaning against the counter for balance. The soft creak of the back door interrupted her stillness. Jeremy's voice, casual as ever, floated into the kitchen. "Hey Mom, can you clean off the folding chairs from the shed? We'll need them for the backyard tables." Elaine didn't respond. Jeremy had already walked out again. By the time Shonda arrived 20 minutes later, Elaine was in the side yard, crouched in the patchy sun with a sponge and bucket, scrubbing years of pollen from old metal chairs like they were heirlooms instead of leftovers. Shonda opened the gate, letting it clink shut behind her. "Girl, what on earth are you doing out here? I thought we were making tea." Elaine didn't look up, just kept scrubbing the curved back of one chair like it had wronged her personally. "Jeremy asked me to get these cleaned. You're doing it like we're expecting Queen Elizabeth." Elaine gave a brittle laugh. "It's Zoe's birthday. They want it to be special." Shonda's eyes narrowed. She'd known Elaine too long. She could read between silences like a lit professor reads subtext. "You're not just out here for these chairs." Elaine set the sponge down and reached for a towel, her hands trembling just slightly. "There was a message. In the family group chat," she said slowly, as if assembling each word before allowing it to leave her mouth. "Lauren sent it. I don't think she meant. She called me the extra guest. Said I'm not an anchor in the family." Shonda was silent for a beat. Then, too, the summer air held its breath with her. "Wow," she finally said. "That heifer." Elaine gave her a sharp glance, but it melted quickly into something more tired. "It's not just her. It's all of it. This house, this yard, these people. I feel like a visitor in my own life." Shonda crouched beside her, gently grabbing the second sponge. "You're not extra, Lainey. You're the reason this house stands. Literally, figuratively, spiritually." Elaine dipped her chin. "They don't see it that way." The wind picked up slightly, rustling the crepe myrtle above them. The sun shifted, throwing long shadows across the line of drying chairs. "They think I'm extra," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Shonda didn't argue. She didn't need to. She just looked at her friend and said calmly, like an opening line in a courtroom drama, "Then maybe it's time they remember whose name is still on the deed." Elaine looked up slowly, eyes narrowing, more in thought than in anger. And in that stillness, as the wind picked up again and distant laughter rose from the house, something in her settled, or maybe something in her began. The attic smelled like cedar, insulation, and a little bit of betrayal. Elaine stood near the narrow window, thin daylight slicing across cardboard boxes and dust-glazed trunks, The summer heat pressed against the roof, making the air syrupy and still. She moved carefully, lifting old tax folders and labeled manila envelopes, her hands methodical but her pulse oddly quick. Somewhere downstairs, Lauren's voice filtered up faintly, organizing something, managing something, always orchestrating. Elaine pushed aside a bin marked Zoe, baby stuff, and pulled free a thick envelope tucked into a leather-bound portfolio. Inside, the original purchase agreement, April 2004. She recognized her husband Daniel's looping signature, and hers right beneath. The ink had bled a little at the edges. Her eyes scanned line by line. 100% down payment, paid in full, from the Mercer's joint savings. No co-borrowers, no Jeremy, no Lauren, just Daniel and Elaine. She sat on the edge of an old trunk and let out a soundless breath. The insult in Lauren's message now curled into something deeper. They had rewritten history in their own minds, but this wasn't a memory war. This was paper, legal, notarized, filed. The hum of her cell phone broke the silence. Shonda, tell me you didn't fall through the attic floor. Elaine allowed herself the smallest smile. Found the docs. We paid every dime. Shonda was quiet for a moment, then said, honey, this house is still half yours. Maybe more, depending on what else is in those files. Elaine's fingers brushed over the folder again. I need to know exactly where I stand. Then you need to call Reed. Elaine sat across from him, spine straight, papers arranged in a neat stack in front of her like a woman showing up for a test she'd quietly been studying for. Reed adjusted his glasses and reviewed each document slowly, then looked up. You've got more than options, he said, voice steady. You've got majority ownership, possibly uncontested, depending on what they did or didn't file in that 2020 attempt. Elaine tilted her head. He nodded, pulling up a digital record. Jeremy initiated a refinance application in March of that year. COVID had rates low, and the property value was up. But, he tapped the screen. It never went through. No signatures, no approvals. Legally it's a non-event. Elaine blinked slowly. And the current mortgage? In your name. With Daniel. Jeremy's nowhere on it. Neither is Lauren. The silence between them stretched. It wasn't shock. It was something heavier. The feeling of a woman realizing that the house she was told to tiptoe through still carried her name in steel and stone. I'd like to explore all options, Elaine said finally, quietly. No ripples. Not yet. Reed nodded. Of course. Discretion is my specialty. Back home, Elaine moved with new purpose. The house felt different, like she was seeing it through a two-way mirror that finally turned transparent. She opened the hallway closet and pulled out a shoebox full of bills, utilities, repairs, taxes, water bill, her name, gas, her name, pest control, roof work, all from her account. Even after Daniel's death, she just kept paying. Jeremy and Lauren had never questioned it. Not once. She flipped through one bill after another, organizing them chronologically on the dining table. In the next room, she heard Zoe's laughter, sweet, light, a rarity these days. She reached the bottom of the stack and found a worn envelope, unmarked except for a faint blue ink smear. Inside, a letter Daniel had written in 2005. Just a note, a simple thing. He'd tucked it in with the deed papers. If anything happens to me, don't let this house be anything less than your home. Never let anyone push you into the guest room of your own life. DM. Elaine stared at the page until her eyes blurred. She folded it gently, like something sacred, then looked toward the hallway, where Jeremy's voice echoed faintly from downstairs. Her hands smoothed the documents in front of her with care. No anger, just precision. The backyard had been transformed. Gold streamers floated lazily in the humid air. A long white canopy stretched across the lawn, anchored by rented tent poles and crisp white tablecloths that looked too new for this house. Caterers in black shirts moved briskly between stations. Charcuterie, sliders, signature mocktails named after inside jokes. Elaine wasn't in. Elaine stepped outside with a bowl of pasta salad in her hands. careful not to step on the extension cords snaking across the grass. The speaker near the grill buzzed faintly with upbeat indie pop. Zoe's playlist, not Elaine's genre, but she smiled anyway. Lauren spotted her instantly. "Oh, good. Elaine, can you just set that near the drinks table? We're trying to keep that end clear for photos." Elaine nodded without a word. She placed the bowl down beside the lemonade dispenser and stepped back into the sliver of shade near the fence, an unspoken perimeter where she'd clearly been placed. The party hummed around her, effortless and bright. Jeremy laughed too loudly near the fire pit with Zoe's college friends. Lauren flitted between tables like a cruise director, all teeth and timing. Her mother, Wanda, arrived in a coral pantsuit and got ushered directly to the head table under the canopy. "And here she is," Lauren beamed. "Zoe's bonus grandma." Elaine didn't react, not outwardly, but the words struck something sharp and brittle deep inside her. She busied herself refilling ice in the drink cooler, head down, until someone touched her arm. "Grandma?" Elaine turned. Zoe stood in front of her, a paper plate in one hand, her phone in the other. Her eyeliner was bold today, dramatic wings like armor, but her expression was soft. "Why are you over here by yourself?" she asked, not accusingly, just curious. Elaine glanced around. "Well," she said lightly, "someone has to make sure the sweet tea doesn't run off." Zoe rolled her eyes. "Come sit with me." They walked toward the side table together, one Elaine had quietly chosen earlier because it offered both shade and escape. Zoe sat beside her, crossing her legs under her skirt, her plate untouched. "I like your dress," Elaine said, meaning it. It was a deep plum color, elegant without trying. Zoe smiled. "Thanks. You should have seen the fight Mom had with me over it. Said it was too old for 19. Elaine's mouth curved slightly. "Too old means too dignified. That's why they're scared of it." Zoe laughed. A short, surprised sound. "Wow. Savage. Grandma?" Elaine reached for a grape from Zoe's plate and popped it in her mouth. "So, tell me the truth. Are you still majoring in pre-law, or have you switched to something scandalous like poetry?" Zoe shrugged, looking out toward the tent. "Still pre-law, for now." Elaine gave her a sideways glance. That sounded dangerously non-committal. "I'm figuring it out." "Good," Elaine said. "Don't rush to put your name on something you don't want to carry." Zoe turned to look at her. "Like a mortgage?" Elaine paused. Her smile didn't fade, but it did tighten at the corners. "Something like that." Shonda's voice came from behind them, as she slid into the last open seat. She wore a bold red hat, tilted with intent, and carried a plate stacked with barbecue and zero shame. "Lord, if one more person calls Wanda the bonus grandma, I'm gonna need to start drinking again." Elaine chuckled. "Don't you dare. You're my designated witness." Shonda leaned close enough for only Elaine to hear. "This house is too small for their egos and your title." Elaine's expression didn't shift, but something behind her eyes lit with recognition. She glanced toward the master bedroom window, the one Daniel had insisted they keep original, with the wavy old glass. Someone had drawn the curtain shut. And for the first time all day, Elaine didn't feel invisible. Reed tapped the final paragraph of the affidavit with a silver Montblanc pen, his desk lamp casting a pool of warm light across the heavy legal paper. "This language here," he said, "makes it clear. You and Daniel provided full equity at purchase. Jeremy made no qualifying contributions. Lauren's name doesn't appear anywhere." Elaine sat across from him, her reading glasses low on her nose, arms crossed but steady. "So this is a statement of fact." "Precisely," Reed replied. "Backed by ledgers, tax records, mortgage history, and signed witness statements." He offered her the pen. Elaine paused, just a beat, then signed her name in even strokes. The moment was quiet, but not small. Not anymore. Elaine stood at the kitchen counter with Shonda, a legal pad between them, the pages already half filled with scrawled dates, receipts, and notes. "Roof 209, 11 ton the 1100s. Out of your retirement check," Shonda said, tapping the entry. "I remember, 'cause I told you not to trust that damn contractor with the fake smile and the plastic tool belt." Elaine chuckled softly. And I should have listened. He charged extra to check the chimney. I don't even have a fireplace. They kept going. Washer and dryer replacement. New HVAC after Daniel passed. Repainting the porch railing twice. Shonda's handwriting was brisk and unflinching. Each line was a memory restructured as evidence. Elaine felt it in her bones, the slow conversion of grief into data, of dismissal into fuel. Later alone, she walked the house, not like someone who was visiting, not like someone quietly tolerated in a space owned by louder voices. She moved like a surveyor, steady, deliberate, stopping every so often to rest her hand on something that carried history. The antique bookshelf in the hallway? Daniel had found it at a church auction in 1997. The brass light fixture over the dining table? She picked it out at the flea market, insisted on rewiring it herself. The window seat cushions, sewn by hand the winter after Zoe was born. Each room gave her something back, not just proof but presence. She was in the living room when she heard Jeremy's footsteps behind her. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there holding a coffee mug like he needed a prop for authority. Elaine was inspecting the fireplace tile, one of the only original details left from the 1920s structure. She crouched slightly, her fingers tracing a chipped corner. Jeremy cleared his throat. Don't rearrange anything. Elaine didn't turn. This isn't your place to be redoing stuff. That got her to stand. She looked at him, really looked at the way his jaw clenched too soon. The faint flush crawling up his neck. The cowardice hidden under practiced civility. Elaine's voice was low, even. I'm not rearranging anything, Jeremy. I'm remembering it. He hesitated, then gave a thin, scoffing smile. You're digging up old paperwork like it proves something. It does, she said. And for the first time, Jeremy looked unsettled. Just briefly, before he turned and walked away, his coffee untouched. Elaine stood in the doorway long after he left the room, her breath steady, her eyes on the molding she and Daniel had installed together the year they bought the house. It was slightly uneven. Daniel had refused to call a professional. They'd laughed about it over takeout that night, greasy boxes open on the floor. Radio playing faint jazz. She ran a finger across the paint. She looked like any retiree taking care of business. A grandmother resolving an errant bill or verifying a deposit, but her heartbeat was high in her ears. The woman on the other side of the glass, young and glossy with a name tag that read Brittany H., scanned the paperwork. Elaine slid across. I just want to confirm something. Elaine said, soft but direct. This mortgage, my name is primary, correct? Brittany typed, paused, leaned forward, and blinked. Yes, ma'am. It's listed under Elaine M. Mercer and Daniel R. Mercer, with no other active borrowers. Elaine didn't smile. Not yet. And Daniel passed in 2015. She added, I see the certificate was filed with us then. Yes, ma'am. So there's no co-signer currently. No, ma'am. Just you. Elaine nodded. Then I'd like to discuss a modification. Brittany hesitated. Clearly not used to retirees requesting full restructuring, but she pressed a button. I'll get our mortgage officer. 10 minutes later, Elaine sat in a quiet back room across from a man named Roger, who smelled like too much cologne and called her Miss Elaine. But his fingers moved fast over the keyboard, and when she showed him Reed's affidavit, his eyebrows lifted. He made a small noise of approval. Everything here's airtight. You're eligible to assume full control. And if you want to remove a potential claimant, well, there's no one on file to even be removed. Elaine folded her hands. Please move forward with that process. Back at Reed's office, her folder now heavier with confirmation, Elaine took a seat while he reviewed the lender's report. Well, he murmured, flipping through the packet, this is cleaner than I expected. No contestable additions. No spousal re-sign. It's like they never bothered to understand the basic framework of the house they're trying to rule. Elaine glanced at the wall behind him where a framed certificate hung, still slightly crooked from years ago. Reed looked up. Ready to go formal? I want full legal control, Reed. Every line. He nodded and pushed the final draft toward her. Then this does it. It removes the ambiguity. She took the pen without hesitation this time. Let's remove the entitlement while we're at it. She pulled open the top drawer of Daniel's nightstand. She hadn't reorganized it since the year he passed. Everything remained in quiet tribute: a box of cufflinks, old reading glasses, two dried-out pens, tucked between a legal pad and a coaster from their trip to Asheville, a photo of them taken in the unfinished living room the day they moved in. Elaine was barefoot, paint on her jeans, Daniel grinning with a brush in his hand. She held it now, fingers curled around the worn edges. "We built this," she whispered. Her eyes didn't water. Not this time. Shonda was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, a teacup balanced on her hip. "Well?" Elaine set the folder on the table, heavy with finality. "It's done. Documents are in process. In a few days, it'll be fully mine." Shonda raised her cup. "Then it's time to unbuild what they added." Elaine poured herself a fresh cup of coffee instead of tea. Daniel had always said coffee was her real fuel. "I'm not starting a war." "No," Shonda said. "You're just rewriting the map, quietly, strategically, like a teacher who caught the whole class cheating." Elaine smiled. She pulled an envelope from the side drawer, sealed and addressed Zoe Mercer, Clemson University. Inside, the full balance of the college fund Daniel had opened for her, untouched all these years, invested carefully. Elaine pressed it closed and placed it near the outgoing mail basket. She didn't need an audience, just a legacy. The next morning, the kitchen was too quiet for how full it was. Elaine stood at the stove, flipping buttermilk pancakes onto a warm plate like it was any other Sunday. She moved slowly but without hesitation, every motion deliberate, every sound measured. Bacon sizzled low in the pan, filling the room with a smell that should have felt like comfort. But Lauren stood near the coffee machine like it owed her something, arms folded tight, lips pursed so hard they looked drawn on with a straight edge. She hadn't said a word since walking in. Jeremy was trying to act normal. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble, Mom," he said, reaching for a plate. Elaine didn't look at him. "It's not trouble. I like when Zoe wakes up to a hot breakfast." Lauren opened the fridge and slammed it shut again. "No reason. Just punctuation." The sound echoed. Elaine finally turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "Coffee's fresh. I'll make my own," Lauren said, moving to the other counter like the pot might be poisoned. Jeremy hovered. Awkward. "So, about that thing with the mortgage. I just think maybe you're overreacting. We're family. You can't just pull this kind of stunt without talking to us." Elaine raised an eyebrow, tilting her head. "Talking to who, exactly?" "The people who called me an extra guest in my own house." Jeremy winced. "That was taken out of context." Elaine stepped closer. "You mean the context where my financial records and Daniel's will apparently mean less than how comfortable Lauren feels at brunch?" Lauren stiffened behind him, but said nothing. Jeremy softened his tone, pleading now. "Come on, Mom. We're family. You raised me better than this." Elaine's voice lowered, but didn't lose an ounce of clarity. "Family shouldn't refer to me like I'm disposable." Silence followed. Even the bacon had stopped popping. Shonda walked in just then, dressed in her church lady leisure wear, perfectly coordinated blues, a scarf tied in a knot she could weaponize if necessary. She scanned the tension instantly and headed straight to the kettle. She said, filling it with tap water. "This is how you burn bridges, at a simmer. No one even smells the smoke till it's already on the floor." Elaine didn't laugh, but she did crack one last egg into the pan like punctuation. Zoe came in seconds later, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her hoodie hanging loose off one shoulder. She blinked at the silence, then looked from Jeremy to Lauren to Elaine. "Did I miss something?" Elaine smiled gently. "Nothing you caused." Zoe's eyes lingered on Lauren's rigid back, on Jeremy's forced smile, then returned to her grandmother. "Did I do something wrong?" Elaine crossed the room and touched her shoulder. "Not one thing." Zoe nodded slowly, eyes scanning the table. "Okay, just making sure." Elaine handed her a plate. Zoe sat next to Shonda and immediately started buttering a pancake like it was the only safe decision in the room. Lauren finally spoke, Voice clipped. We just wish you'd been more collaborative about all of this, Elaine. That's all. Elaine didn't even glance her way. Collaboration's a two-way street, Lauren, and your GPS has been broken for years. Jeremy looked ready to speak again, but a soft chime interrupted. Elaine's phone on the counter lit up. Reed Shaw, final documents confirmed and filed. You now hold sole authority, or, Elaine read it without reaction. She simply turned back to the stove and placed one last pancake onto the center of the platter. Breakfast is ready, she said, her voice smooth as water over stone. No one moved for a long beat. Then Shonda leaned back in her chair and sipped her tea. She murmured. That tastes like justice. The smell of charcoal drifted over the backyard fence like a polite warning. Elaine stood at the edge of the patio, holding a platter of marinated chicken thighs, watching as Shonda adjusted the grill vents with all the confidence of a woman who knew meat, smoke, and timing like gospel. The backyard was modest, but in that late afternoon golden light, it looked almost cinematic. Folding chairs in a soft half-circle, a vintage record player humming Bill Withers low in the background, and neighbors trickling in with deviled eggs and paper napkins. Elaine wore linen and pearls, not fancy, intentional. Zoe moved between the guests with 2 pitchers of lemonade, pouring refills like a hostess who'd been watching and learning. She laughed at something the Abernathys said about their new rescue dog, and then circled back to her grandmother, offering a look of quiet affirmation. This is nice, Zoe said. Elaine nodded. It's not a party, it's a gathering. There's a heartbeat to a gathering, Elaine said, her eyes scanning the small crowd. A party's just noise and expectation. Shonda called from the grill, tongs pointed like punctuation. These thighs are done. Someone better appreciate the char on this skin or I'm taking it home. A few guests chuckled as Elaine stepped forward, tapping her glass gently with a fork. The clinks quieted the music and clustered the conversations. She didn't raise her voice, but she didn't need to. Thank you all for coming. I just wanted to take a moment to say. She paused, looking toward Zoe, then Shonda, then the grill smoke curling upward like incense. There's something sacred in claiming what's always been yours, your name, your time, your space. She raised her glass, to ownership in all forms. A ripple of raised cups followed, quiet clapping. No big fanfare, but it wasn't for show. The realtor from down the block, a sharp-eyed woman named Lydia wearing platform sandals and red lipstick, stepped beside her and gave a little whistle. This yard is stunning, she said. Honestly, Elaine, if you ever wanted to list this place, it'd be snatched up in a day. The porch alone, buyers would fall over themselves. Elaine smiled, not flattered, not even tempted. I know what it's worth now, she said, spraying a clean arc of water over the base of the plant. Lydia nodded, as if she understood more than she said, then drifted back toward the mingling guests. Elaine didn't move right away. She stood at the edge of her lawn, hose in hand. As dusk softened the lines of the house, she looked up toward the second-story window, her old sewing room, once, now a reading nook Zoe helped her repaint. And across the street, almost hidden behind the sheer curtain of their living room window, stood Lauren, arms crossed, still, watching. Elaine didn't wave, she didn't acknowledge, she simply turned off the hose, coiled it slowly, and walked back toward her house. Her house with the ease of someone who no longer needed to argue her place in it. Elaine found the envelope the morning after the cookout tucked halfway beneath her bedroom door like a whisper. Someone didn't want to own. She picked it up without rushing. Pale ivory, no return address, just her name in blocky handwriting. Inside a single sheet, confirmation of ownership modification, effective immediately. The mortgage for 120-7 Larchwood Avenue is recorded under one primary borrower, Elaine M. Mercer. Elaine exhaled, not relief, not surprise, recognition. She walked it straight to the kitchen, poured herself half a cup of black coffee, and sat at the table. No ceremony, no need. She snapped a photo of the document and sent it to Reed with a simple message. Received. Proceed with next steps. Within an hour he responded. County record filing submitted. Locks cleared for change. By sundown, every door had a new deadbolt. The back gate clicked when it closed now. The garage keypad blinked with a fresh 6-digit code only Elaine and Zoe knew. She dropped the spare keys into a small wooden box and labeled it in Sharpie "Authorized only." Shonda watched from the porch swing, sipping sweet tea like it was spiked with satisfaction. "Well," she said, rocking gently, "this feels biblical." Elaine smiled faintly, but her eyes were fixed on the front step. Jeremy came home just after dusk, his phone held in front of him like a compass that suddenly stopped working. He tried the front door, then the side, then the garage. Nothing. He knocked twice, tentative, then sharper. Elaine opened the door halfway. "Problem, I can't access anything. The bank, the bills, even the Nest accounts locked out." Elaine nodded once. "Yes, I removed your access." "You what?" "I also changed the locks. Legally." His jaw flexed. "You're tearing the family apart." Elaine tilted her head. "You didn't make room for me in the family to begin with." He opened his mouth, then shut it. Behind him, Lauren appeared on the sidewalk, arms crossed, phone in hand like it might become a weapon at any second. She called out, "This is vindictive, Elaine." "No," Elaine said, stepping out onto the porch. "Vindictive would have been public. This is just correction." Lauren scoffed. "You're obsessed with control." "No," Elaine said again, this time looking her directly in the eye. "I'm done surrendering it." Lauren took a step forward. "You've embarrassed your own son. He did that all by himself." Zoe opened the screen door quietly behind her, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Grandma, you want me to take these up to your room?" Elaine turned slightly. "Yes, please. Third drawer." Jeremy stared at Zoe, his voice suddenly sharper. "You're really staying out of this?" Zoe blinked at him, then looked to Elaine. "I'm not out of it." She went inside. Jeremy stood there a moment longer, shoulders rigid, Lauren pacing slowly behind him like a woman recalculating an entire strategy. Elaine didn't flinch. "I suggest you update your address with the county," she said. "Mail gets complicated when you don't legally live somewhere." She shut the door, not slammed, just closed. With certainty. Elaine was trimming the rosemary bush when her phone buzzed. A message from Zoe, just a screenshot, clean, simple, brutal. "Lauren Mercer, we should have pushed harder when Daniel died. She was too soft back then. We could have had the deed transferred by now. Reed's a relic. She won't hold up in court." Elaine blinked slowly. No hello, no explanation, just facts in plain pixels. Another message followed. This one a forward. "Zoe thought you and Reed should have this." Elaine walked inside without a word, set the pruning shears in the sink, and sent the screenshot to Reed. 2 minutes later her phone rang. "Save everything," Reed said, not bothering with pleasantries. Time stamped. Screenshots. Forwarded messages. "Anything Zoe can send. She will. I'll draft a notice to preempt any legal filing. It's not about reacting. This is about being ready." Elaine nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. "I've been ready." Reed exhaled slowly, and Elaine could picture him loosening his tie with one hand. "They're going to come with accusations, coercion, capacity, maybe even elder manipulation. They'll throw it all at the wall and see what sticks." "They won't find anything that does," Elaine said. Still, when she hung up, a cold whisper of memory stirred in the hallway. She opened the linen closet and pulled down the old black lockbox, a dull little thing she hadn't touched in nearly a decade. Inside, documents, floppy disks, and a stack of unlabeled DVDs. She thumbed through them, her breath catching on one with a faint, Sharpie scrawl. Mercer 2004, Lone Talk. She took it to the TV room, the only space in the house that still had a combo DVD player, thanks to Shonda insisting she never trusted streaming. The screen lit up grainy and washed out, the camera clearly perched on a shelf or mantel. A much younger Elaine sat at the dining table. Across from her, Jeremy, fresh out of grad school, jittery but smiling. He held a pen. "Mom, I just want to say thank you again for the down payment." Jeremy said in the recording. I wouldn't even have this house if it weren't for you and Dad. We'll make it our own, but I know whose name built it. Elaine pressed pause. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just hit rewind, burned a digital copy to a flash drive, and sent it to Reed with the subject line, "Memory as evidence. Use when need." That night, Shonda curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and a box of lemon bars she claimed were for guests but had no intention of sharing. Elaine handed her the printout of the group text Lauren had sent. Shonda read it once, then again. "Well," she said, "that's the thing about the past." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "It doesn't vanish. It waits." They sat in silence a long moment, the kind that stretched without sagging. Then Shonda added, "You think they'll actually go through with it?" Elaine didn't hesitate. "Yes." And right on cue, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, voicemail left. She played it on speaker. "Hello, Mrs. Mercer. This is Carrie Foreman, with the county clerk's office. We just received a legal inquiry regarding the Larchwood property, a request to freeze further title amendments pending a family dispute. It was submitted by an attorney not listed on record. We flagged it as irregular, but thought you should be informed. Please contact us at your earliest convenience." Elaine ended the message. Shonda didn't say anything. She just reached into the lemon bar box and pushed one toward Elaine like a communion offering. Elaine took it, bit in, then said softly, "They finally woke up." Beige walls, muted carpet, a single American flag drooping slightly behind the bench. No drama, no grandeur, just process. Elaine sat at the table beside Reed, her spine straight, hands folded loosely in her lap. She wore a slate blue blazer and her late husband's wedding ring on a chain tucked beneath her blouse. She hadn't worn it in years, not until today. Across from them sat Jeremy and Lauren, flanked by a young attorney who looked like he'd been plucked from a commercial about student loan forgiveness. He flipped through his notes with too much flourish, as if speed could substitute for substance. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a voice that belonged in a science lab, called the session to order. Reed stood first. "Your Honor, we are here today responding to a petition filed by Mr. and Miss Mercer, Jeremy and Lauren, alleging concerns about the mental fitness of my client, Elaine Mercer, in the handling of her legal and financial affairs." He turned slightly, gesturing to Elaine. "My client is here today with documents, recordings, and eyewitness accounts spanning nearly 2 decades, demonstrating full clarity, capacity, and consistency of intent." The opposing attorney rose. "We believe Mrs. Mercer was unduly influenced during a period of emotional vulnerability. The changes made to the property title, sudden and severe, suggest possible manipulation and perhaps lack of full understanding." Reed didn't flinch. "We'll let the record speak." For the next hour, Reed laid out the timeline: mortgage records, notarized letters, Elaine's utility bills in her name alone, the failed refinance Jeremy initiated without follow-through, the paper trail of uninterrupted payments, all hers. Then came the DV. The screen wheeled down from the ceiling with a soft mechanical whir, and the grainy footage flickered to life. Jeremy's voice, 10 years younger and unmistakable, filled the room. "I just want to say thank you again for the down payment. I wouldn't even have this house if it weren't for you and Dad. We'll make it our own, but I know whose name built it." Elaine didn't look at Jeremy. She didn't need to. When the screen went dark, Reed walked the court through emails confirming Elaine's conversations with the bank, her submitted paperwork, the living trust documents, all signed, dated, consistent. Then he called Zoe. She stepped up in a soft green dress and white sneakers, her voice calm but firm. "My grandma has never been confused. She's the clearest person I know. She's been managing her finances longer than I've been alive. She didn't get pressured, she got fed up." The judge leaned forward. "You live with her now, is that right?" "Sometimes. I'm back and forth from school," Zoe said. "But I know what a safe person looks like, and what it looks like when someone's trying to erase them." The judge nodded once. There were no further questions. 10 minutes passed before the ruling, but the weight of it felt like years. "There is no evidence," documented or testimonial of undue influence, cognitive decline, or financial exploitation. This court sees no basis for intervention. Miss Mercer retains full legal authority over the property in question. Her gavel tapped the desk once. Sharp. Done. Elaine felt the breath leave her like a tide. Reed leaned in. You just made case law for every widow in Greenville County. But across the room, Lauren stood frozen. Jeremy stared down at the table, lips pressed tight. As people began to rise, Lauren stepped close, too close. You'll be alone when you die, she hissed under her breath. You know that, don't you? Elaine turned to her slowly. Her eyes were cool, steady. Better alone than surrounded by people who erase me while I'm still breathing. Lauren flinched, just a flicker, but then smiled thinly, like she'd won something no one else could see. Elaine stood at the threshold of the den, watching the morning light stretch across the hardwood floors like a ribbon. In her hand, a manila envelope, thick, formal. Inside, the legal notice Reed had couriered over. Termination of residency agreement. 30. It was written in cool, lawyer-perfect language, but it said everything it needed to. This house no longer tolerated uninvited guests. She placed it on the hall table, centered, unhidden. He came in with his tie loosened, an over-the-shoulder gym bag, and the same casual entitlement he'd worn since Daniel's funeral. He picked up the envelope, skimmed the header, and froze. Lauren came in a beat later, holding her phone mid-scroll. What? Jeremy handed it to her. She read silently. Her jaw stiffened. You're evicting us? Elaine stepped out from the kitchen, unhurried, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Not evicting. Enforcing your leave. You can't do this. I already did. Lauren moved toward her, less confident than usual. We're your family. Elaine's eyes didn't waver. You had 30 years to act like it. There was a flicker of something genuine fear in Lauren's expression. We'll lose everything. Zoe's tuition, her future. Elaine cut her off. Zoe's tuition is already handled. You just didn't know it. Jeremy's voice cracked slightly. Where are we even supposed to go? Elaine didn't answer. She walked the kitchen drawer, opened it, and pulled out a fresh set of keys, unmarked, and placed them in a small cedar box labeled X. Then she turned, walked into the living room, and began folding blankets from the guest sofa like it was a regular Tuesday. Behind her, Shonda entered with a clipboard and 2 rolls of painter's tape. All right, she said, we're color coding. Red is yours, blue is Elaine's. If I catch anyone swapping stickers, I swear I'll call Channel 4. Elaine cracked the faintest smile. She's not joking. Zoe came down the stairs, hoodie over pajamas, earbuds in, eyes wide. Is today the day? Elaine nodded. You don't have to stay in the middle of this. Zoe slipped her earbuds out. I'm not in the middle. She looked at Jeremy and Lauren, then back to her grandmother. I'd like to move in. Temporarily. Elaine's throat caught. Not enough to show, just enough to feel. You sure? Zoe glanced toward the front door, then the upstairs hallway, then back to Elaine. Yeah, I'm sure. Lauren took a small step forward, almost desperate. Zoe, please, but Zoe just blinked. You told your friends Grandma was a burden. I've seen the texts. Lauren paled. Jeremy turned away, hands on his hips, lips tight. In the next hour, Shonda moved through the house like a well-dressed SWAT team. Everything Lauren and Jeremy owned was packed with precision, labeled exit, and stacked neatly in the garage. No damage, no drama, just done. At sundown, Elaine changed the door code. She did it herself. She didn't ask for help, didn't announce it. She simply pressed the numbers into the keypad. 1207D-M, then set the system to private access. No beeps, no ceremony, just a soft mechanical click. Zoe stood in the hallway, holding a grocery bag of sundries. What does the code mean? Elaine closed the cover on the keypad. Our address, she said, and your grandfather's initials. Zoe smiled. That's pretty baller. Elaine raised an eyebrow. I'll pretend I know what that means. The paper was folded neatly on the breakfast table beside her mug, cream cooling in black coffee. Zoe must have brought it in before her early class. A yellow post-it was stuck to the front page in all caps. Your front page famous. Zoe Elaine lifted the paper. Headline, Retired Teacher Takes Back Her House and Her Voice, by Maribel Gates, Greenville Community Watch. Below the headline, a photo, not one Elaine had posed for. Someone had snapped it from the sidewalk during the cookout. She was mid-toast, glass raised, Shonda blurry in the background, the string lights casting a faint halo above her head. She read slowly, carefully. The article was direct, respectful. No embellishment, no drama, just the truth. A retired school teacher and widow had reasserted her legal rights after years of quiet erasure. She'd fought back methodically, legally, and won. No names were printed, but the subtext was loud enough for anyone in Larchwood Avenue's HOA thread to decode. Elaine folded the paper once, set it down, and took her first sip of coffee. It tasted sharper today. By the end of the week, the letters began to arrive. Not emails, not texts, actual letters, typed and handwritten, on cardstock, loose leaf, lined notebook paper. Some came with photos, others with old class rosters. Mrs. Mercer, you were the first teacher who told me I was worth something. Thank you. You once stayed after class to help me fix a sentence. That sentence got me into college. My mom showed me the article. I remember your voice. I remember how calm you were when we were all chaos. Elaine read them on the porch, sun warming her shins, her feet wrapped in knit socks. Zoe had ordered online as a housewarming present. Shonda read over her shoulder and dabbed her eyes with the edge of a napkin. I always said you were a quiet legend. Elaine smiled. Well, apparently the neighborhood caught on. Then came the invitation. Reed forwarded it with a note. Thought you might appreciate this. Also, I may have sent them a copy of the article, with bolded highlights. The email was from the Greenville Women's Legal Alliance. Subject, Keynote Inquiry, Women and Property Rights, Autumn Forum 2025. We would be honored to invite Mrs. Elaine Mercer to share her experience with asset control, inheritance law, and intergenerational property resilience. Elaine stared at it for a long time. Then she opened a new tab and typed, accept, with gratitude. EM. The social fallout came quickly and quietly. Zoe showed her screenshots like trophies. A Facebook post from one of Lauren's friends. Turns out the extra guest was the landlord. Oof. A clipped LinkedIn update from Jeremy. Pursuing new opportunities. No likes, no comments. Zoe scrolled through one more thread, then looked up. They're getting dragged. Elaine didn't gloat. She didn't even flinch. It was never about humiliating them. I know, Zoe said, but I'm still glad it happened. Elaine looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, saw someone who had inherited more than a college fund. She saw presence, integrity, fire. I'm proud of you, Grandma. Elaine swallowed hard. Thank you, sweetheart. That means more than all of this. Zoe paused. Does it feel over? Elaine leaned back in her chair, eyes lifting toward the ceiling, then slowly toward the porch window. No, she said, but it feels quieter. It started as a polite inquiry, a letter delivered by hand in a navy envelope, pressed through the mail slot just before lunch. No fanfare, no knock, just a quiet note from Lydia, the same sharp-eyed realtor who had complimented the yard during the cookout. Inside a formal offer, an all-cash buyer, no contingencies, above market pricing. They love the home's bones, the neighborhood, the story. They read the article. Elaine read it twice, then once more aloud. Zoe looked up from her laptop at the dining table. Wait, are you considering it? Elaine didn't answer right away. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the yard. The hydrangeas she and Daniel had planted were blooming again. The mailbox Jeremy once dented backing up too fast, still leaned slightly left. The porch swing creaked like an old song. I'm not just considering it, she finally said. I'm accepting, Reed processed the contract in 3 days flat. Best deal I've negotiated in a decade, he said, tapping the closing statement with his pen. You'll walk away with more than double your original equity, and no strings. You kept it clean. Elaine nodded. That was the plan. He slid a final folder across the desk. She signed without hesitation. Packing was surgical. Shonda oversaw the process like a moving day general. You don't take the grief. You don't take the guilt. You take the good. They wrapped only what mattered. The quilt from Daniel's mother. The tea kettle Zoe painted in 5th grade. The stained glass lamp from Elaine's old classroom. No boxes of memories. No one respected. No furniture. Lauren had passive-aggressively upgraded. Elaine labeled each box herself. Sharpie letters, block print, keep, donate, release. Zoe walked in with a small blue envelope and handed it to Elaine. Bank confirmed it today. Education funds now fully in my name. Trustee status assigned. Elaine placed a hand on hers. You'll manage it wisely. I already made a folder, Zoe said, grinning. Spreadsheets and everything. Shonda looked up from across the room. That's your bloodline, right there. Elaine smiled, but it didn't linger long, because that's when the message arrived. Her phone buzzed. Lauren Mercer. You'll regret this. Elaine read it once. Then she typed back, that's what you said about the folding chair, and hit send. She touched the corner of the doorframe where Zoe had once measured her height with a marker. She ran her fingers along the dining table's edge. Still nicked from Thanksgiving 2008. She stood on the porch and let the night wrap around her like it had so many summers before. But this time, there was no ache. There was only the quiet relief of choosing the ending before someone else tried to write it. Elaine stood in the foyer, keys in one hand, the other resting lightly on the banister. Daniel had refinished their second spring in the house. The wood gleamed in the morning light, warm and final. The doorbell rang. 2 people stood on the porch, young, maybe early 30s. One held a reusable coffee cup, the other a bundle of hydrangeas from the yard, stems still damp. Hi, the woman said, breath catching slightly. Are you Mrs. Mercer? Elaine nodded. The man stepped forward, smiling. We're the buyers, Emily and Marcus. We just wanted to thank you in person. Elaine handed over the keys. You're getting a good house. We can tell, Emily said. It feels lived in, loved, still standing. Elaine smiled. That's about right. They shook hands. No speeches, no lingering. As she stepped off the porch, one last time, Elaine didn't look back. She didn't need to. Everything worth bringing. They drove in companionable silence, past the library, past the Baptist church, past the coffee shop where Elaine used to grade papers on Saturdays. Downtown Greenville unfolded gently in the windshield. Brick buildings, iron balconies, midsummer green shading the sidewalks. Shonda parked in front of a 3-story brick condo, clean lines, flower boxes in every window, a welcome mat that didn't try too hard. I told you, Shonda said. Perfect size for a woman who doesn't take nonsense. Elaine exhaled. Or prisoners, Shonda snorted and handed her the keys. Inside, the condo was cool and bright, wide windows, tall ceilings, quiet enough to hear your thoughts, but not loud enough to get lost in them. The furniture had already arrived. The couch was modest, the bookshelves empty, the rug soft underfoot. A home in waiting. Zoe showed up an hour later with arms full of groceries and a vase of white tulips. I figured you might want something that doesn't expire in 5 days, she said, holding up the flowers, and also snacks. Because I love you. Elaine took the tulips first, then the bag of granola bars. This is how you win inheritance points. They unpacked together 2 boxes, 1 plant, 3 framed photos. It didn't take long. At dusk they sat cross-legged on the rug with takeout containers between them, laughing over something Shonda had texted. If you buy a juicer, I will stage an intervention. After dinner, Zoe pulled out the small flash drive. You still want to? Elaine hesitated only a moment, then nodded. One more time. She inserted the drive into the TV. The screen flickered, grainy, warm. Jeremy's young voice filled the room. I just want to say thank you again for the down payment. Elaine watched, quiet, still. Zoe didn't speak, just reached over, gently rested her head against her grandmother's shoulder. When the screen went black, Elaine didn't cry. She simply stood, walked over to the window and looked out at the city skyline. Different view, same sky. The sky was soft gray and cloudless. The kind of Carolina morning that didn't ask anything of you. Elaine stood barefoot on the balcony with a warm mug of coffee cupped in both hands, her robe tied snug, her breath rising just faintly in the summer air. 3 stories up, the world sounded smaller, quieter. She liked that. Below, joggers passed in pairs. Somewhere, someone was baking. She caught the faint drift of cinnamon and yeast. But up here her wind chimes swayed gently without needing permission. The plants along her railing, fern, basil, lavender, stirred with the breeze. Inside, her new condo glowed with soft light from floor lamps and open windows. Books lined every shelf now, loosely grouped American lit, memoirs, old yearbook. One shelf held nothing but music, vinyls and CDs and a vintage Bose speaker that Zoe insisted counted as aesthetic. The kitchen was stocked, the bed stayed made, and there was always fruit in the bowl. At exactly 9:10, the door swung open with a familiar voice trailing in. Okay, this grocery bag is way heavier than advertised. If my shoulder falls off, you're getting my scholarship refund. Elaine turned from the balcony. Zoe Mercer, you're not supposed to carry anything heavier than your future. Zoe laughed and dropped the bag on the couch. Too late. And guess what? Elaine raised an eyebrow. I got it, Zoe said, breathless and grinning. The Greenville Scholars Fund, full ride. Room, board, books, everything. Elaine blinked, just once, then crossed the room and pulled her granddaughter into a full, unapologetic hug. Zoe held on for a second longer than she had to. But, she added as they pulled apart, I'm still visiting every week. You're stuck with me. Elaine stepped back, brushing Zoe's cheek gently with the back of her fingers. That's the only guest list I'll ever need. Later, after Zoe left with a Tupperware of peach cobbler and a reminder to text when she got back to campus, Elaine returned to her small office nook. She opened the drawer of her oak writing desk, third one down, the one with the brass pull. Inside, a crisp copy of the final deed, printed on thick paper, embossed and notarized. Her name stood alone, no cosigner, no amendment, no footnote. Elaine placed it gently inside a navy folder and slid it beneath a stack of bank statements. She locked the drawer, then, as if summoned by perfect timing, the front door opened without knocking. Shonda stood in the entryway with 2 glasses and a bottle of Merlot. Hope this place still allows old women with good shoes and bad boundaries. Elaine waved her in. You're always allowed. I just haven't figured out how to stop you. They sat together on the balcony, legs tucked, wine poured. To what? Elaine asked, raising her glass. Shonda clinked hers gently. To never folding your legacy again. Elaine took a sip. The wine was dry with a cherry finish, the kind that lingered. They didn't say much after that. They didn't have to. As the sun edged over the rooftops, Elaine leaned her head against the back of her chair and let the stillness settle deep in her bones. She thought about the house, about the papers and the people and the porch. She thought about the door code she'd erased and the flash drive tucked safely away. She thought about Lauren's texts, Jeremy's silence, and Zoe's laughter echoing faintly down the hall just an hour ago. And then, without fanfare, the final line came to her, whole and clear, like it had always been waiting. They left me out of the group text, but I was always the one who owned the house.